I'm trying to speak more towards the felt needs of the business owner, and they usually have three things they're saying to me. Number one, I have too few leads. Number two, the leads that I do have are too expensive. And number three, they're pretty low quality leads. Often they're tire kickers, they're wasting my time, they're getting multiple quotes, and if I don't come in the cheapest, they're going with Chuck in a truck for beer money. And so those are the three things that are on their mind, and I eventually will point out to them, most of them are not thinking about the fourth thing, which is next year, the year after that, the year after that. Are you able to sustain what it is that you're doing now? Not even just grow, but sustain, because the thing that you're currently relying on is not land that you own. Yeah. It's not relationship that you own. You are borrowing relationship from other people if you are buying leads with predominantly a pay-per-lead or pay-per-click campaign. And so I'm trying to de-risk a little bit so you're not sharecropping on Google's land, but you can actually start to own your own land while solving for 1, 2, and 3. More leads, cheaper leads, better leads.
Advertising is a tax you pay for not being remarkable. Welcome to Todd Liles and the Wizard of Ads, a podcast for business owners who want to become remarkable. Tater salad, Todd Liles is going to take you deep into the mind of Roy H. Williams, the Wizard of Ads, to unleash the timeless truths and secret strategies that have helped him build dozens of America's most successful businesses. Do you want to build a brand that wins the heart, captures the mind, and creates lasting relationships? Take a deep breath and buckle up. It's time to fly.
Welcome back to Todd Liles and the Wizard of Ads. I'm Todd Liles, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Roy H. Williams. Roy, how you doing today?
Extremely very good.
Good, thank you. I'm glad you're here. And today we're going to be doing a 4-part mini-series, and this is episode 1. And we are joined by Jake Williams, which is the president of Williams Marketing. And yes, that is also Roy H. Williams' son. Jake, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Been looking forward to it for a while.
I appreciate you being here. And what Jake did in preparation for this, for the listener, I want you to know this. He spent about 2 hours pre-recording his thoughts, finding the best content and the best material on the subject of advertisement specifically related to what's going on in the world right now when you're thinking about what's happening in the space of Google, what's going on with AI, and he's put together a very robust set of show notes. So this might be an episode that when you're not in your car, you might want to tune into YouTube and actually check it out, because there's going to be lots of graphs that he's going to be sharing. Jake, I want to actually start at the very beginning and talk to us about what the big problem is that you're trying to solve for our audience right now today.
All right. So I have the good fortune of having a lot of conversations with business owners, often home services businesses, who are reaching out because they feel stuck. And often what got them to a certain threshold is not getting them any further. They're bumping their head against the glass ceiling, and they're looking for an explanation of where to go from here. And there's 3 things that are usually on their mind, and I'm trying to straddle the world of the academics, the data scientists, the evidence-based marketers, the research world, right, which is very valuable but very insular. You can talk in a jargon that does not connect with people and feels irrelevant and kind of confusing and useless. I'm trying to speak more towards the felt needs of the business owner, and they usually have 3 things they're saying to me. Number 1, I have too few leads. Number 2, the leads that I do have are too expensive. And number 3, they're pretty low quality leads. Often they're tire kickers, they're wasting my time, they're getting multiple quotes, and if I don't come in the cheapest, they're going with Chuck in a truck for beer money. And so those are the 3 things that are on their mind. And I eventually will point out to them, most of them are not thinking about the fourth thing, which is next year, the year after that, the year after that. Are you able to sustain what it is that you're doing now? Not even just grow, but sustain, because the thing that you're currently relying on is not land that you own.
Yeah.
It's not relationship that you own. You are borrowing relationship from other people if you are buying leads with predominantly a pay-per-lead or pay-per-click campaign. And so I'm trying to de-risk a little bit so you're not sharecropping on Google's land, but you can actually start to own your own land while solving for 1, 2, and 3. More leads, cheaper leads, better leads.
Land being mental real estate.
Mental real estate.
Yeah, and so when you have a presence in the mind of a customer, you can sell them before they need you. And when you have no presence in the mind of the customer, you have no media other than the last minute media of online marketing. And now they don't have a preferred provider. And all providers are equal in that moment. And that favors the people that are selling that last minute media.
Right.
And that price of that goes up and up and up. And the number of leads and the quality of those leads goes down and down and down and down. But when a person's caught in that whirlpool and getting sucked downward, they have to keep doing that volume before they can go to the next level. And so to start something new that's long-term thinking, planting an orchard, you have to first get it planted, and that takes time, energy, and money. Then you have to wait for it to start producing fruit, which takes time. And so that transition is the hardest thing of all.
And let's get into that. And what I want to do is I want to address something that came up. I'm not sure how many years back, but Google came up with this thing that they called ZMOT,
Right.
Which stood for Zero Moment of Truth. And Jake, why don't you just explain what ZMOT is in just super plain language?
Sure. So ZMOT was released, I think it was one of the directors of marketing at Google around 2011. He wrote a book, and it was building on some stuff I believe that Procter & Gamble came up with about the first moment of truth. And their big idea with ZMOT coming out of Google in 2011 was the notion that before you make a purchase in the early 2000s, you tended to go to Google first and do a little bit of research in preparation for said purchase, getting some reviews, figuring out where to buy it, doing a little bit of your due diligence to make an informed decision. And it was very cleverly done. And there is value in that framework of understanding, hey, people are probably going to do a little research and hit Google before they come to you. But it was also very advantageous to Google to emphasize ZMOT at the expense of all other marketing energies and activities that you could be doing. And so they made the zero moment of truth paramount. And even if you look at some of the videos where they announced this thing, it was kind of taking the place of traditional advertising by making the statement, hey, we all go to Google before we spend some money and hire someone new, make an informed decision. And so you need to be reaching them at that zero moment of truth, which is before the first moment of truth where they talk to you. Before they talk to you, home services company, they talk to us, Google. And if you want to continue having a business, you need to play our game, the Google game of being found here and recommended here on page one. And that means spending a lot of your time and energy and money optimizing for us, spending money on our platforms, et cetera. And so what I'm trying to do as a thesis, as a theory of the case for why so many people are drowning right now in home services is that Google very effectively redefined what it is to do marketing in home services. I'll show you in a minute, but we had, for example, with the pay-per-click advertising, an 89% increase for home services, according to one really robust pay-per-click service. They had a huge data set, and you can look over time at what happened.
Just before we jump into that, just to sort of land the plane for the audience.
Yes.
Zero Moment of Truth was Google's real big marketing push to basically say, you must start here. Because this is where people start, as though there isn't such a thing as relational marketing and radio and other forms of advertisement. So it was getting into the mind of their audience, saying this is the place you start.
Exactly.
Now, this might seem like a tangent. It's not. I promise you. It's a point I'm going to make. When you think of Tucker Carlson, right? The right-wing talking head. And you picture him in your brain. What do you picture him wearing?
Well, there's the bow tie from back in the day.
And you know that still people that know his name picture him wearing the bow tie. He hasn't worn it in over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes a thing will stick in someone's head, and it'll stick in someone's head so well that it gets stuck there for a very long time. And I think what you just pointed out is a truth, Jake, which is a lot of people have bought into that zero moment of truth philosophy, whether it's true or not. And what do you think about that, Roy?
The bow tie is different, surprising, and distinctive. So anytime something isn't often seen, and this one guy always has this bow tie on, then he becomes Mr. Bow Tie. And he will always be Mr. Bow Tie, and you'll never escape that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but remember, new, surprising, and distinctive. If it wasn't distinctive, if he just wear a red tie, lots of guys wear red ties. But a bow tie is a little bit of a Poindexter move. And you come across like a little Poindexter, and people think Poindexter is smart.
Yeah.
If you get some little nerd glasses and a bow tie, it lifts your perceived IQ by like 30 points. If you have a British accent, now it's 50 points.
Hey, you're even smarter.
You know?
So, Roy, what's your humble opinion on Zmont?
It's a scam. It's a scam. It's a con. And they presented the truth far more powerfully than what was even remotely accurate. And so, was there a grain of truth in it? Yeah, a grain, but not a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And it was self-serving. But the reason it landed with people is people said, oh, yeah, people do go to Google first. Well, when we get around to talking about AI, you realize, oh, yeah, the battlefield has changed entirely.
Yeah.
And so this is where people need to understand yesterday's rules of engagement are no longer valid, and they're not nearly as important as they used to be. And there's a constant evolution when it comes to online marketing. But see, the way that people come to decisions, the way they research things might change, but the way they come to decisions doesn't change. Human beings are not like software or like digital hardware. Human beings are the same they've been for hundreds and literally thousands of years. And when you understand the human operating system, now you can build a brand. Until you understand the human operating system, you're just being led by your nose by some tech company who knows how to make crap up.
Mm-hmm. Jake, you've got a graphic here, and for those that are driving in their car or maybe walking on their treadmill, would you verbally unpack what we're looking at?
Yeah, so we'll make sure to put in the show notes all of the specific links where you can find out more about the researchers, the firms that put this together, and I'm grateful to be able to leverage some of that work. So I'll emphasize here the point so that we make the hero of the journey the business owner, rather than the data scientists, the marketers, the firms, et cetera. But let's give straight to the point here of what they found. This was in a data set by the IPA in conjunction with, I think it was Newsworks and some others. But in 2015, about 2/3 of all the ad investment was on what they called high attention media. And they defined that as things like TV, radio, magazines, the news. And then only 1/3 was spent in what they were calling low attention media, which was predominantly online and social media. And so when you think about the context of Zmont and what it effectively did since it was introduced, you can see on the far right that we have now swapped positions. Over 2/3 of all ad investment is in what they're calling low attention media, predominantly pay-per-click, Google, and its ilk. And only 1/3, less than 1/3, is spent in the high attention media, typically more traditional media, things like TV, radio, et cetera. And so Zmont and the spell that it cast on both marketers and business owners alike very effectively made Google capture just ginormous amounts of money. And the problem is that you can take a good thing too far. And so our premise, and what we'll talk about over the next several episodes, is not that Google is ineffective or irrelevant or anything like that. It's that people got captured in this performance mindset, performance marketing being the idea that you need to have very trackable, traceable
immediate
data.
measurement, yeah.
And Google was really good at saying you can't measure your radio effectiveness as clearly as you can measure your Google spend. And it became much easier to defend your work in places that offered performance marketing. And particularly when you think about the average CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, has a tenure of 2 years or less, they're not worried about what's going to work best 5 years from now. They're worried about what's going to work best 5 weeks from now for their next quarterly earnings report. And so there was this interesting collision between the stuff that works the fastest, which is spending a bunch of money on Google, and the stuff that's the easiest to defend, where you can trace, here's the money that I spent and here's what I got out of it. And so everyone, like a stampede, rushed to the same auction. And that is what I was about to show you in the next 4 slides, is the degree to which when everyone comes up with the same playbook, you run away from the traditional high-attention media towards the newer low-attention media, and the price goes up. Mm-hmm. And so the price of TV and radio is lower than it's ever been, relatively speaking. The price for things like pay-per-click is higher than it's ever been, relatively speaking. And so they took that good thing of performance marketing too far. And we'll talk about in several other groups how they misunderstood the importance of brand priming, of brand equity, of long-term brand building, and all these things that are a little bit mushier. But we have now gotten the data from the data scientists to say that stuff that we forgot to pay attention to 15 years ago, it was actually really crucial to getting better customers.
So for those of you that can't see this graph, I want you to imagine it's a traditional graph, right? And at the center point to where what you refer to as low attention media and high attention media, the center point is basically 2020. That's where they almost come together. In 2020, low attention media just surpassed high attention media at 53%. That's your pay-per-click. High attention is now 47%. In 2015, it was 68% high attention media, 32% low attention media. And if you go all the way to the most current stat, it's 70-30. So there's been this huge dramatic swing. Now, we're going to unpack this over several episodes, but here's the thing that I want you to walk away with, because I'm sitting here listening to Jake, and he said, hey, they're doing what works quick and that works fast. And if I'm sitting here having a home service business, I'm probably saying to myself, yeah, it's January and it's not cold where I'm at. It's not hot where I'm at. And I want the thing that's going to work quick and work fast. So now what I will tell you is if you were doing that in 2015, 2011, it could have also been cheap. But what Jake will point out today is that it ain't cheap anymore. Mm-hmm. And not only is it not cheap anymore, it quits working. So we'll unpack that in a moment. But before we do, Roy, you had said AI is about to change things.
Okay. To wrap up what you were just saying.
Yes.
I get it. When people say, man, I got to fill the board right now. I gotta bring on some calls. I gotta get my techs in the field. Okay, I get that. Now, what you're about to do is not sustainable.
That's right.
And it is not scalable. Not sustainable, not scalable. You're not building a brand. You're solving a short-term problem.
Yes.
Now, when you understand, you can't, it's not sustainable. You can't keep doing that. It won't work. But everybody goes just one day at a time. I'm going, yeah, one day at a time passes, and then someday you're old and dead. It's like you got to make sure you do, in fact, start doing the smart things sooner or later. Now, having said that, your question was?
Well, we're going to transition into AI here in just a second. But before I do, you said something that's made me got to double click on this, right?
Right.
We all know that exercise the right way produces very long, effective results for health, your mind, your body, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
Yet at the same time, that if we think about the people that we fantasize as the key of health when it comes to exercise, it's typically not healthy people. Mm-hmm. It's typically bodybuilders that are on so much steroids that I think I saw a statistic one time that the average bodybuilder has some major health crisis at around 35 years of age.
Wow.
You know, you constantly see these guys are dying of heart attacks. Mm-hmm. If you look on the surface, we see guys like Chris Bumstead, who I think he won like 6 or 7 Mr. Olympias in his weight class. he was the modern equivalent of Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you're in that market, you know who he is. A lot of people that are listening to the show know who he is. Well, he retired fully, and if you listen to him speak about why he retired fully, he said, well, I basically had to quit doing this because it's totally unhealthy. And to me, it's not too dissimilar sometimes to what you see people that have lots of money. And by the way, you got to have lots of money if you're going to do lots of steroids.
Right.
They just burn through their health, and they're doing something that isn't sustainable. It's going to end in a heart attack or some major, broke back, or you're going to come off of
and
it.
businesses are like that.
They're like that.
The thing that works the biggest in the short term isn't sustainable, it isn't scalable, and it doesn't work over time. And so getting people to move from short-term emergency mode crisis into long-term, let's just pay the price, endure the pain, live through this transition. And so it comes down to financial staying power and courage, which is emotional staying power.
Well, Jake, you have another graph here that actually shows average cost per lead from 2021 to 2022. I think you wanted to bring this out as an emphasis to the point. So verbally walk us through some of the rising costs that we see here.
Thank you. So going back to the theory of why people are reaching out for help and the notion of the single most common reason a home services company schedules time with me is because their expenses on Google have just gotten cost prohibitive. And they don't have the broad view of what it's like for everyone else. But it's a little bit both validating and discomforting to hear it's not just you, and it's not getting better anytime soon, right? This pay-per-click treadmill that you're on has been getting faster, and every indicator suggests it'll continue to get faster over time. And so what I try to do is cite from impeccable sources. WordStream, I think it was in conjunction with Local IQ, did a vast data set, and they spent a crazy amount of money trying to do a great job of managing people's pay-per-click budget. And so anyone that I'm quoting, by the way, I think highly of. So even when I'm saying stuff about their data, which feels a little bit gloom and doom, it's not to shoot the messenger. I'm grateful that they are sharing with transparency what the data set's showing. But you have to call it like you see it. And I'm saying this data set is very troubling for me because there's a trend here. And so I'll show the trend for what we've been seeing in recent years, and you can start to understand, especially in conjunction to what I showed you earlier with the swapping of now most of the people are all coming to the same conclusion. I put all my money in online spend. What does that translate into? So 2021 to 2022, cost per lead. And so we're not talking just cost per click, but actual cost per lead. This is taking into account conversion rate and all that stuff, right? I'm trying to simplify stuff here. So true researchers could say, oh, you kind of took liberties and made this sound simpler than it really is. I'm going to take as many liberties as I can to make it digestible for a business owner who doesn't want to study this stuff for a living, right? So average cost per lead for home and home improvement went up 13%. That year, going into 2022 for home and home improvement. Next year, same data set, it went up another 22%. Next year, going into 2024, it went up again another 24.61%. The year after that, it went up again 10.5%. We are now looking at, when you stack just those 4 years and multiply them out, an 88% increase in the cost per lead if you're getting it from Google. And so there is a sense of the sky is falling when you're having to spend that much more money to capture the same number of people that you captured previously.
The thing that has been said to me commonly whenever I will speak at a big event, business owners will sit down and they don't even know each other, and they all say, I'm spending twice as much money to get half as many leads as I was 4 years ago. And I'm going, and I said, hey, I'm not in charge of that. I said, this idea of, it's an auction. It's a really efficient auction. And when everybody is bidding in the same auction for the same leads, there's only a certain number of clicks that are going to happen. And it's a very efficient auction. They've maximized to make sure the people who do get those clicks are paying the largest possible price, and that's the business they're in. And so the deck is stacked against you. It's stacked so that you're guaranteed to lose if the game goes long enough. And what happened is, see, it didn't start that way. The early adopters made a fortune.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a fortune to be made if you're an early mover. And we have a lot of friends that were early movers that are no longer in that game.
Yeah.
They completely pulled out.
Well, this is somewhat similar. When I built Service Excellence, I built it on content marketing. And I promoted our blogs there. And I can show you data from way back to when I was promoting blogs. And for $10, I could get the blog to reach 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would constantly update that. And today I don't promote any blog content anymore. I've switched and decided I was going to do something different, which is try to make really poignant, shareable content, but never put any money behind videos or blogs, because the moment you do, the machine goes, oh, this guy will spend money, and it'll quit spitting out that attention everywhere else. But it's not too dissimilar, like what you said there, Roy. If you're on Google, and Google is much, much more sophisticated. They're all sophisticated. But I mean, Mark Zuckerberg did just become one of the three, not him personally, I don't believe, let me phrase that, his company. Facebook is now one of the three that's worth over $1 trillion. Did you know that?
$1 trillion?
$1 trillion.
Is a frightening amount of money.
It's a frightening amount of money. Then they're not worth that because of anything other than advertising. So it's another like platform, and a lot of business owners, you don't hear that much perhaps in your world, but I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going towards Facebook as an advertisement platform, and it's just anyway. The bottom line is it all just becomes ridiculously expensive if we're using a company who has an algorithm that is always going to be ahead of you. They have programmers that just sit there and go, how can we maximize and squeeze every single penny? How can we make them think that they're going to get something? We can give them some data. And then not only do they have programmers, they've got, and I'm putting it in air quotes, but they have partners. Mm-hmm. They're incentivizing almost every marketing company out there to bring more and more. And I mean, I think the average digital marketer is getting somewhere between 15 to 25% of what you are spending with Google. And a lot of people don't realize that. Mm-hmm. That's a massive cost to spend just for a brokerage fee, in my opinion.
Well, and so it's funny you mentioned Meta, for example, and Facebook ads. So this just came out, and this is a 122-page book by Andrew Tyndall. And so System 1, the FEs, they have some of the best data sets.
The FEs are the efficiency awards.
Effectiveness awards, yeah.
Effectiveness
and
awards,
so we'll talk more about some of this probably in some shout outs and an after reel of who we're getting this data from and how we know it to be true. But they studied the relationship between global meta revenue, short-termism, brand building, and emotion. And so you'll recall on my previous slide for attention research, we had this X shape going on. Mm-hmm. So too, this is now some new data that I literally was working on over the weekend. It just came out. And so the creative dividend, the 2026 version, they had a previous version that I think was smaller. They updated to show that it was around 2020 that you can see there was this tipping point. And so global meta revenue is now showing kind of hockey stick growth in concordance with short-termism, short-term objectives. And so this is everyone swallowing the ZMOT kind of assumption that you have to be able to measure at all costs, even if it's not the most efficient or the most effective. They would rather be able to prove they have this data trail than actually get the best results for their client. And so brand building and emotion started here at the top left quite high, and they have since moved down and to the right. Conversely, global meta revenue and short-termism back in 2011 started at the bottom left, and now 2024, it's moved to the top right. So imagine just this X that's happening as no one believes in building a brand for the long term anymore. Mm-hmm. And we had Les Binet and Peter Field, I think it was around 2013, they wrote the long and short of it, and they saw this coming from a long way off. And the thesis of the case they were making is that you need a lot more long-term brand building to counteract the performance mindset, the short-term thinking of everyone back then, and it's gotten worse since then. And so there's a whole thing we can get into about why short-termism is so attractive and captivating. But going back to work and the multiplier effect, a lot of this comes back to attribution. And so they had a data set that they were able to indicate 190% overestimate for impact channels like paid search, because it's easy for paid search to grab the ball of someone that was won over with things like brand TV. So in this chart at the bottom, you'll see brand TV is underestimated by 90%. And this was the impact of a brand equity play, brand building, because if they type your name into Google and paid search ends up getting credit for it because you bid on your own your own name as a keyword, right? A defensive bidding strategy, for example. They're going to say, oh, see it, that was the digital brand building, or that was the digital performance advertising that we did. It's like, no, they typed your name into Google because they were looking for you, because they heard of you. It was either through a friend or it was through some sort of traditional or broader mass media, right?
No, not that many years ago. I remember I had a number of large clients in the tower at Wizard Academy in Austin. And, I mean, these were big companies. Dewey Jenkins was there, King Goodrich was there, Brian Scudamore for 1-800 Got Junk was there. I mean, guys that have $500 million and billion-dollar brands, okay? And I remember at one point, Ken and I had only been working together for like 3 years. And, of course, he's since sold the company. I remember turning to Ken, I said, hey, Ken, I said, do you remember that conversation we had the day we decided to work together? And he said, yeah. And I said, and I asked you, what's your current cost per sale? And he said, $350-something. But don't worry, everybody has that same cost. It's a level playing field. So don't worry about that, because I said, no, I am going to worry about it. I said, here's why. I said, is there any reason that's going to go down? Nope. That's going to be the cost. I said, okay, now here's what's going to happen. In less than a year, somewhere between 6 months from now and a year from now, you're going to start seeing that cost drop like a rock. And I said, but all of those sales are still going to be tracked by Service Titan. They are going to type your name into Google, and they're just wanting to know, do they have a facility in my town? And are they open right now? Mm-hmm. And, what's phone number? Mm-hmm. Because we don't advertise a phone number. And so I said, now here's what's going to happen. When that starts dropping like a rock, because the mass media has begun to kick in, and now people are looking for you by name. They've already chosen you, and they're looking for you by name. They're not typing in air conditioning repair. They're typing in GOETTL. And he goes, yeah, I remember the conversation. And you told me, don't let the digital guys take credit for that, because they didn't do it. And I said, okay. I said, how much were you spending when we first started talking? He said, $2 million a year in digital. I said, how much are you spending now? And he said, less than $500,000. And I said, how much bigger is the business? And it was like multiple times bigger. And I said, and what's your cost per lead right now? He's like $37. Or cost per sale, $37. I said, so it's fallen by like 90%. And who's trying to take credit for that? And he goes, of course, the digital guys. We're all trying to take credit for that. And he said, but you told me they would. And he says, I've said, no. And we were funding the mass media for less money than we were saving on the digital spend. Mm-hmm. But what you have to do is you have to survive that transition period where you have to keep doing what you were doing to keep getting what you were getting, so that then you have to double down and add this mass media, and it's painful. Mm-hmm. And you get panicked because you get 60, 90 days in and it's not working.
Right.
And so that chickening out period is pivotal. And that's why more people have never made the transition. They just can't survive the pain of doing it.
Well, I think that it's surviving the pain, which has to come from other actions that have taken before you take the pain, right. Which is you got to have a reservoir. And a lot of folks don't have a reservoir, and it's sort of like why the poor stay poor, because they make decisions that poor people make. And I'm definitely not making fun of anyone that was poor. I grew up very poor, but you see it,
both of you
right?
did.
Yeah, I mean, but the decisions that poor people make that keep them poor are doing things like swapping in their paycheck for a high interest loan that they're going to have to pay back next week, and now they're just down 15-20% of their money. And this is not too dissimilar. And you go, well, how do you break that cycle? And I'll say this to people that I visit with, and they don't like it. I said, look, either you're going to have to save the money. Now, if that means you're going to save the money, which means you're going to build a war chest so that one day that you can start actually doing relational branding, that means years of sacrificing other things that you want. You can't just get a new truck. You can't take, big, nice vacations. And they go, well, that's not why I got into this business. I go, no, I get that. But you're going to either have to, A, make that sacrifice, or you're going to have to, B, see if you can borrow the money from a bank at a traditional loan, or you're going to go borrow it from an investor. And I said, the moment you borrow it from an investor, you've lost control of your business. So you have to pick. But whenever you decide that you're going to do that, you need to have a war chest built up that you can afford to pull from for a period of time. Otherwise, you're going to get to a place and you're going to be like, okay, I'm freaking out. I'm going to quit doing this. I'm going to go back to doing poor people things. And I know that doesn't sound attractive. I'm basically saying you're going to need to be disciplined. You're going to need to sacrifice for a few years to save up some money, and then you're going to have to wait a few more years to save up some money. But Dr. Price was my professor that led me into the honors college at Louisiana Tech. And I was in his, basically it's like, the student welcome class. He had the student orientation. And he did one of those things. He said, hey, look to the right, look to the left, look at the first person in front of you, right? And he said, 25% of you are going to graduate and the other 75% are not. And he went over the reasons why. Some of you are going to decide this isn't for you. That's okay. We need people working in the oil fields. Some of you are just going to get pregnant and decide you can't finish school. Well, that's all right. Raise your kids, come back when you can. He wasn't judgmental.
Right.
But he was making the point that 25% of you will graduate and 75% of you won't. The 25% of you that will graduate are just going to be those that are willing to put through the pain for the next 4 years. And that's what it is, right? It's like we're basically saying to people, if you want to do something that's really good for you, it's not going to be very sexy for a couple years, but it'll be worth doing it.
Well, it can be fun as long as you're keeping your eye on the prize, as long as you're looking at the outcome down the road. And that usually happens whenever the campaign is finally fully designed, fully developed, and in motion. And there comes a moment when they realize, oh yeah, this is gaining momentum and it's creating a buzz and this is obviously going to work. And so the social proof, okay, I was getting some feedback from a client just this past week, and the real social proof of a new campaign on television was coming through. And he goes, oh wow. He goes, some of the calls we're getting are just people calling up saying they saw the ads and they wanted to know who was that person because he's a great actor. I said, no, that's actually the owner of the company. And they said they're just losing their mind. Is that really is the owner of the company? And they said, yeah. And it's Billy Klein.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so anyway, I'll show you those ads. But the point, not today, but people in Dallas-Fort Worth are just going, this is crazy.
That's a good ad.
And
I've seen it.
yeah, well, the thing is, has he made a vast amount of money from those ads yet? No. He's definitely seeing some movement and some growth, but he knows it's coming.
Yeah.
He goes, I can tell now that it's going to come. And that moment when it's finally developed and happening is when finally you relax a little bit. And you said, okay, now I'm beginning to see this crazy stuff I was told is actually true, and this is going to turn out okay. But getting to that point, man, it takes nerve. It takes courage.
So, listener, we have set up the fact that getting to a place to where you can do long-term relational branding is a little bit painful, but it's worth it. In the next episode, we're going to prove why long-term brand building is worth it. But before we end this episode, I got to bring something up. This is something that I think that platforms like Meta have an advantage, and I don't think they're telling the truth about it. All right. Now, this might be Todd's paranoid trip, but I'm going to tell you anyway. This last Friday, we had long lunch with you, Penny, Chris Shannon, Manly Miller, and his wife Dana. Now, Manny brought up something specific to his neck of the woods in New Orleans. Do you remember what he was talking about?
No.
He was talking about king cakes.
Oh, yeah, king cakes.
He was talking about king cakes. If you don't know what a king cake is, it's like a beautiful cinnamon roll with a cream cheese glaze. That's not doing it justice. It's like a French bread cinnamon
It's
roll.
18 inches by 24 inches.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I grew up in Mississippi. There's lots of them. Now, when Shannon and I go home and I open up Facebook, what do you think is blowing me up left and right?
King cake?
Videos about king cakes and where to buy them.
Good.
And I flip the camera over.
And he's in Austin, Texas. He's not in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Right.
So I flip it over and I go, look at this. And she starts laughing because it's happened so many times. I've not looked at a video about a king cake. I've not searched for a video about a king cake. And until I sat with Manly Miller, I had not seen a video about a king cake. Now I'm seeing king cakes to the point that it's annoying. They don't admit it directly. They say things like, "Oh no, we know when you're in the presence of someone who has looked at king cake, so now we're showing it to you." So here's the thing, right? I don't want to buy a king cake. Some people would. Some people just laugh it off and be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go buy a king cake," and it's probably just my asshole personality where it pisses me off. It's like, don't do that. That doesn't make me.
You feel like you're being stalked.
I am. I feel like I'm being spied on. Even if they're not listening per se, they know what Manly's been looking at, and they go, "Oh, Manly and Todd are sitting by each other." In a way, it's kind of
Big Brother.
Creepy.
It's
George Orwell, 1984.
It's a little creepy.
But I bet they're doing it because they're probably making a lot of sales off of it.
Of course.
Or at least they're selling a lot of ads for themselves off of it. So that's going to be the fun little talking point that we're going to wrap up with. I want to hear your perspective on my conspiracy theory that Facebook is doing what I just described.
Do I think that Facebook is creepy? Oh, yeah. Whether it's that particular
Have you not
type
had
of
that
thing
experience?
or other types of things. I think that they know plenty about you, and it can definitely be the case. I recall Target, for example, would sometimes send advertisements for expectant mothers before the dad even knew she was expecting, right?
That's exactly, that's
so
true.
Big
Got them in a
companies
lawsuit,
have
as a
big
matter of
data
fact.
sets and can do some crazy things with it. I think my thing is coming back to the focus of where I end up. I'm usually on the opposite end of what most colleges are preparing most marketing experts, most majors to do in the world. What works in a big company like Target for marketing and what works for a little guy that's got 3 trucks and is trying to get his 4th truck, very different. And so that would be my final takeaway is don't try and copy what mega corporations in the Fortune 100 are doing. They have a different playbook, a different set of strengths and weaknesses and opportunities. And so everything I'm going to be thinking about for our next episodes is saying, what is the minimum viable product? So we can talk about the threshold point versus the point of diminishing returns in a future episode. And we need to make sure, going back to the pain that you guys were talking about, that you can get past the threshold point to actually do some of this long-term brand building, and don't cross that threshold till you're ready.
Okay, I love it. Jake stayed perfectly on task. Roy, what about you? Is Facebook?
You know I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about king cakes.
Let's do it.
We're talking about king cakes. So Manly brought 2 king cakes, bought them fresh. We got on the plane. He and Dana flew here, and I'm here for 5 days. And so I had these 2 king cakes. And I said, this one's definitely the best. And he says, yeah, there's tons of people that make king cakes, but this one is our favorite. It's a lot of people's favorite. You got to stand in line, never, ever, ever less than an hour to get one, ever. Any time of the day, and you're lucky to get one. And so he told me, he checked into it and found out for an absolute fact, the one that we all like the best, he says, this guy only runs this bakery 7 weeks a year, from January something until Mardi Gras, basically. Says there's basically 7 weeks a year. It's the only time he's ever does it. He's literally works 7 weeks a year, has a 45-week vacation every year. His profit every year is over $2 million. He makes over $2 million profit in 7 weeks. So here's the point. I said, there must be a huge margin in this. He goes, yeah. And he goes, that's why so many people are in it. And this guy can have this huge commercial bakery that he only uses 7 weeks a year. And he makes $2 million a year profit, net profit, in 7 weeks. And I'm going, huh. Now, here's the thing. They only do that in New Orleans, but it's a big deal in New Orleans. Nobody buys just one. These are getting consumed for 7 whole weeks every year, and it's like Christmas. There's a certain time, a certain window of the year where these are available. People absolutely love them because they're denied these king cakes for 45 weeks. And so if there's a marketing thing to be learned from this, okay, if you get in step with what people already want, it's easy to sell. If you try to convince them of something that they don't already believe in, you're spending a lot of time, energy, and money trying to convince people of something that they don't really have any interest in. Find what they're already interested in, find what they already care about, find what they already want, and offer them that.
Yeah. You know, and what you said there, I think actually summarizes in part the battle that we're actually trying to fight here on the show. People are convinced that what they think that they want is digital marketing. And we're having to do the serious investment.
I was talking about message content.
Right.
I'm saying what you say in your ads, most people are saying this stuff they wish people cared about. And I'm going, but they don't. Find out what they actually care about and talk to the customer about what the customer already cares about. Quit talking to them about what you want them to care about.
Oh, no, I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It's just, if I'm a contractor, what we're bringing to them is something that they need to know that might be a little bit upstream, but it's worth doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Good show.
Yeah, we'll call it at that.
You've been listening to Tater Salad, Todd Liles, and the Wizard of Ads, where the bold win and the remarkable reign. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss a conversation. If you want a copy of the show notes or watch the ads from today's show, head over to toddliles.com/wizard. This episode is dedicated to the business owners who refuse to be ordinary.